Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about Craig's Kalam cosmological argument. Now, I want to emphasize that this argument is really just a updated version of an argument that was extremely well developed by an Islamic philosopher, al-Ghazali. So Craig is just taking those ideas and updating them a tiny bit for a modern audience so as to make them a bit easier to understand. But the ideas themselves, almost all of them come directly from al-Ghazali. So in this video, we're going to start out by talking about, well, how can we create a picture of the universe? Then we're going to talk about Craig's, what I'm going to call his beginning premise, his philosophical defense and his scientific confirmation of this premise. Then his next premise, which appeals to what we're going to call the principle of causation, and a defense of this premise that appeals to pure reason, and a defense that appeals to experience. Then at the end of the video, we're going to try to take all these pieces and put them together into the Kalam cosmological argument. So let's imagine that I want to draw a picture of the universe and all the things that happen in it. Well, one thing that's happening right now is here's me yelling about philosophy. But now, if I want to sort of picture my life consists of more than just this moment. So at some point in the future, I'm going to die, hopefully very far in the future. But so the way I might represent this is I can draw an arrow sort of going into the future with a sort of dotted line. The dotted line sort of represents, well, here's things that will happen, but they haven't happened yet. So I could draw a picture then of me in a coffin in the future, hopefully yet again very far. But again, I also need to draw a picture of the things that happened in the past. So here's a picture as you go to the left, you're going farther and farther back into the past, and there's me graduating from school. You go back farther and farther, there's my birth. But there are also things happening in this universe before I was born. You go back farther, there's World War II. You go back farther, and there's the dinosaurs. But there are things happening even before the dinosaurs. Now, obviously, this timeline is not to scale, but you get the idea. We can use these timelines to draw pictures of how things are related in terms of past, present, and future. But now we might sort of say, look, how should we finish this picture of what time itself looks like? There seems to be two ways we could finish our picture of the past and the universe. Maybe the past goes back infinitely. So there was something before the dinosaurs, before they existed. And maybe there was the Earth without dinosaurs. But there was something that existed before the sort of Earth existed. Maybe the sun existed. Maybe something else existed. But then we could say, well, what happened before that? Well, one answer is that it just keeps going forever and ever and ever. We could represent that by just adding an arrow at the end of the line representing the past, just to sort of say, look, keep going. Or alternatively, maybe if we go far enough back in the past, maybe eventually we'd reach a starting point to the past and to the universe itself. So the question becomes, well, which picture of the universe is correct? There's two ways we can draw the picture. One with the arrow, the other one without the arrow, where just sort of the line stops at some point in the past. Well, one of those is the right way to draw the universe, and one of them is the wrong way. The question becomes, how can we know which one is correct? Well, all of this leads to Craig's central premise, what I'm going to call the beginning premise. The premise here is just the universe began to exist. So Craig thinks that no, the line doesn't just keep going back into the past forever and ever infinitely. Sooner or later, you get to a point where the universe started to exist. He thinks that's the right picture of the universe. Why should we believe that, though? Given that there's another way to draw the picture, why should we think that's the right way? Well, Craig is going to give two defenses. One is a philosophical defense, and another one is this idea that there's sort of scientific confirmation to back up what the philosophy says. So let's start with the philosophical support. In order to do this, Craig distinguishes between two kinds of infinity. There are potential infinities. So this is a collection of things that's increasing towards infinity, but is never actually there. So let's imagine I start counting one number every second. 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, notice I could just keep going and going and going, and I'd be sort of slowly going towards infinity as time goes on. But at no time, if you ever sort of stop at sort of 7 seconds, I would only have counted 7 numbers. If you go sort of a million seconds from now, I would only have counted a million numbers. And so at no point do I actually ever finish. I would never have actually counted in infinite numbers. I'd just be going towards it. An actual infinity is a collection where the number of members really is infinite. It's already there. It's not getting closer and closer, but it's already complete. So Hilbert's hotel was an example of us trying to imagine a hotel with an actually infinite number of rooms. Because notice, it didn't say, look, imagine that they're building one room every second and they just keep building more and more forever. No, it says, let's imagine that they're done building rooms. They're done with construction. Imagine that there are already an infinite amount of rooms with an actually infinite number of people inside those rooms. Now, if the universe has no beginning, so if the past just goes back infinitely, well, then the past would be an actual infinite. Because notice, we've already reached the present point. So the past is already done with. It's already finished. It's already complete. And so if there's an infinite amount of time in the past, that would be an actually infinite sort of amount of time. However, Craig claims that actual infinities are impossible, since when we imagine an actual infinity, we are led to absurdity. This is the point that Hilbert's hotel, according to Craig. He says, look, imagine Hilbert's hotel. Imagine an actual infinity. Well, if you imagine that actual infinity, it leads to this absurd scenario where you have a hotel that is fully occupied but still has room for more guests. But that doesn't make any sense. And so he says we should reject the idea that an actual infinity like that is really possible. So Hilbert's hotel is supposed to support this idea that you can't have actual infinities. And that's supposed to support the claim that you can't have an infinite past either. Then Craig says that this philosophical idea is also confirmed by some of the scientific evidence we have. So he appeals to, look, in 1929, Hubble discovered what's called redshift in the light from other galaxies. So you're all familiar with, maybe if you hear a train go by, the pitch of the sound, it sounds like the horn is like changing pitches. In reality, it's not. The sound is exactly the same, but the sound waves shift as the train is moving away from you. Similarly, light waves shift as things move away from us. They sort of shift towards the red end of the spectrum. And Hubble discovered that no matter which way we look, so all these other galaxies seem to exhibit this red shift, which gives us evidence that the universe is expanding in size. All these other galaxies, no matter which direction we look, they are moving further away from us. And so, question, what would an expanding universe look like if we metaphorically rewind time? So as we go forward in time, the universe is expanding, getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So if we were to reverse time and look into the past, what would we see? Well, it would look like the universe is getting smaller and smaller as we go back into the past. And the idea is, but if we just keep going back smaller, 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 eventually you get to a point where you can't get any smaller. The upshot is that at some point in the finite past, probably about 15 million years ago, the entire universe that exists now was contracted down, was all contained in a single mathematical point, which marked the original universe, or the origin of the universe. The initial explosion of all that has come to be known as the Big Bang. So all this stuff about the redshift in the expanding universe is the evidence in favor of this Big Bang theory. Right. Now, Craig gives other scientific support, and he also gives other philosophical support, but we won't look at the other ones. We're just going to look at those two. All right, so Craig then combines this idea with an appeal to what we can refer to as the principle of causation. He says, whatever begins to exist has a cause of its existence. Now notice, this doesn't say that everything has a cause. It just says whatever has a beginning has a cause. There has to be something that causes it to begin to exist. So why should I believe that? Why should I believe that everything with a beginning has a cause? So this principle of causation has traditionally been defended in two ways. One way to defend it is appealing to pure reason, as it's sometimes put. It is just by thinking about this really hard, you'll see that it has to be true. It's kind of like Descartes' cogito. The idea is you don't learn that you exist by experience. You just think about it really hard and realize that in order to have any beliefs, you must exist. So it has to be true. Your reason tells you it has to be true. This is how Craig defends the premise. He says, look, it's just obvious, it's intuitive that something cannot come from nothing. You see that has to be true when you think about it hard enough. He says it's so obvious to our reason that you don't really need to defend this premise. Now, Al-Ghazali, he puts it in a nicer way where he sort of says, look, it's kind of like Newton's laws of motion. So something that's at rest tends to stay at rest. Something that doesn't exist tends to stay not existing. And so in order to make a change, to bring it from non-existence to existence, something would have to sort of push it into existence. And the idea is, well, that thing would be a cause of its existence. All right, now, another way to defend this premise is by appealing to experience. So in our experience, everything with a beginning has a cause. Look, we don't ever see things popping spontaneously into existence. I have a beginning, and I have a cause, my parents. You have a beginning, you have a cause, your parents. You didn't just spontaneously, sort of miraculously just pop out of thin air. Similarly, the desk that I'm working on didn't just pop out of thin air spontaneously or randomly. We don't see that happen. Someone had to take all these parts, put them together, and build the desk. That person was the cause of this desk. All right, so the idea is we might generalize and say, well, since in our experience, everything with a beginning has a cause, things don't just pop into existence randomly without a cause, we might generalize and say that's true about everything, even the things that we don't see the beginnings of. Like the universe. No one was there to experience the beginning of the universe, but since everything in our experience with a beginning has a cause, the universe too probably has a cause of its beginning. So putting all the pieces together, we get Craig's full Kalam cosmological argument. Whatever begins to exist has a cause to its existence. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause to its existence. And according to Craig, that cause is God. In the next video, we're going to discuss some worries or challenges to Craig's argument. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.